Destiny, should you play now and why? And that could also apply to a why not. For me, Destiny is this, it's like a 3-month game for me. It usually is roughly about the 2 months prior to the expansion, a month into the expansion. And every time I hope that they hold on to me. Every time I'm just like, I wish that Destiny can continue to deliver these expansion-based experiences. And yet I kind of just burn myself out of the seasonal model. But Chris, I want to know, what ultimately is bringing you back into the fold? You have told me, for those who don't know, Chris and I, like, we've played this game with the exception of Witch Queen, like every year. It's a game that we always kind of play. And it's one that you say, I don't know why I stopped playing. I log out with the intention to play tomorrow. And then all of a sudden you wake up and it's like, oh, there's how many expansions? I've missed 2 like coming back for Lightfall. What about Destiny is getting you to re-up this time?
I mean, so I booted up this morning and it had like 60,000 pop-ups. It makes you go through every news pop-up that you've missed for 2 years. And so all I could remember was the presentation for Diablo 2 before it released, where they said they were going to minimize the amount of time to shooting. That was one of their core development philosophies, was how do we shoot more? We just want to shoot more. And I was like, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to boot it up today, just make sure my controller's working. It should be plug and play, but I plugged my controller in. I installed the game on Friday. I meant to play over the weekend. I got busy doing other stuff. And so, because Witch Queen was free for everybody to play just for the weekend.
Yeah.
So I was like, great, I'll jump in, mess around a little. I didn't. And I booted up this morning and it was like 85 dialogues to like get my ship out to space to go into a planet.
Did it throw you into a mission? That's the best part. Like when it's like, oh man, I haven't played in a while. And then you're like, I'm now fighting something. Like, wait, what happened?
You got to take this really seriously. They're talking to you. You got to be invested. You can't just get your feet wet. You have to go straight into story with no prior awareness. Which if that's what you want, if you sat down and you're like, I'm booting up Destiny for the first time, I want my cinematic experience. But I just wanted to verify the shooting worked for tomorrow. Like, that's it. I just wanted to verify. I just wanted to like just shoot something and log out. And that was a journey. So I'm reminded of like what friction pushes me out each time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that there's just all these needless why moments, like all these little, like the UI is just a little goofy. And the something about collecting the items is just a little goofy. And like, I remember just all these little friction moments, and no one on its own is worth making a big deal about. It's not. You are absolutely sitting down at somebody else's house for dinner and they put the fork on the wrong side of the plate and then you just freak out. But it's that there's 200 of these little things. Mm-hmm. And so that starts to get really cumbersome. So like, I'm reminded of that. But what got me to come back is that my understanding is, yes, while my client is trying to remind me of all the stuff I've missed, is that this time around, that seems to be one of their big core focuses. It sounds like one of their big core focuses is that, yes, they want to release an expansion. They want to release content because that's what the people who are perfectly happy with the game are here to play.
Yeah.
But for all the people that they'd like to come back, all the people they'd like to try the game out for the first time, and all the veterans who they're like, yeah, I'm playing, but that doesn't mean I'm happy about everything. They want to go through and just improve all those little friction points.
Yeah.
Because the core gameplay that's underneath is really amazing. But you just have to dig through all these little like thorny branches to get there. But it's awesome. And so if they could just kind of prune back some of the thorns, maybe that's what keeps me in longer this time.
There's so many different elements that I'm personally excited for with Destiny. Now, I'm not going to talk spoilers because there is I think a really fascinating story. I've been playing since the Destiny 1 beta, and I've had this hardcore Destiny play style, and then at the same time this very casual or just checking in on it occasionally play style. Like having done all the raids in Destiny 1, I don't think I actually did the King's Fall raid. I think there was one raid that at the end of Destiny 1 that I was like, I don't know why I'm here. And then ultimately having come into Destiny 2 and done most of the raids and the content, but I ended up just kind of living in Destiny 2 for a PvP perspective. And it wasn't until they started doing their sunsetting, their vaulting of content that I was like, well, I'm going to go do the PvE stuff. And I did that kind of as a self-defense mechanism because we lost everything from D1 to D2. I wasn't necessarily happy with the D2 experience originally, but then Bungie went to work. They showed up. They had the core gunplay, and then it was just a matter of the things that were around it. And then going into, like, I can say the Witch Queen itself, I feel like the Witch Queen is by far the best showcasing of Bungie and their expansion and their campaign. Because one of the things I even got frustrated with, like Beyond Light, was like at some point I'm like, wait, where's the campaign go? Like, what am I supposed to do? I need to go do this now, and then it turns out I didn't need to do that at all, and it was actually this thing over here, and I completely missed it, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll go do that. It kind of had all these like, I'm fine with secrets, but it just felt like there was this great pacing, and all of a sudden you kind of had to stop. But then Witch Queen solved that. Like the Witch Queen's campaign structure was just so good. Like it felt like I had this really cohesive experience, and it made me excited to jump into the other systems of the game. But the seasonal model has been something that I've continued to talk about and vent my frustration at, because I've often found myself wanting to play Destiny about 2 to 3 weeks before the new season, and then going, well, that progress is just getting completely reset. I guess I'll wait 3 weeks and start. And then I kind of miss out on that momentum and that hype that I was excited about originally. And so the model that they had was disincentivized. But while they haven't updated the season or annual pass or whatever they're calling it, they have added this thing called Guardian Ranks. So I'm very curious to see if my overall Guardian rank system is my motivator to be playing whenever I want to play, whether it's 3 weeks before the seasonal pass or whatever. Is that going to be the core like character grind, that investment? Because I love Destiny's horizontal progression because it sticks with me. Every year at the expansion, the vertical progression all gets reset, so I don't stress about that. I know that's the relationship I have with the game. But it's horizontal, chasing the various different exotics, getting their catalysts, doing those different quests, and so on, that I find a lot of joy in because I carry that forward, that investment. Whether I like end up liking the gun or not, like it's always fun to kind of look into my vault and be like, oh yeah, I have that. Oh, I have that. Oh, I've got that. Oh, I remember doing that quest. That was wild. That was crazy. So it ends up like instilling these really good memories that even if I'm not actively using the gun, and then as metas change, that kind of says, oh, wow, I already got that. Let me go and kind of play around with that. Oh, I'm missing that piece. How do I go find it? And they've built some of that. Like they've really kind of refined their collections and some of the systems that I think really do highlight some of the things you can chase, which is kind of nice. But it's going to be something where it's like, I'm so thrilled because this is kind of, I've been playing Season of the Seraph. I really enjoyed what they offered. I really enjoyed what they brought to the table. And I'm really looking forward to Lightfall as it then sets up the final shape. But then now we're back into this mystery. Will we get a Destiny 3? Is now the time to start or return to the game itself? And so that's essentially kind of where I hope that this ultimately, we here in a couple of weeks, we can sit down and say, oh, wow, like this is different, because the quality of life and the loadouts and everything they're bringing, it just is something that I've been wanting in this game for a very, very long time. And I really do feel hurt as a Destiny player right now.
The speculation towards a D3.
Yeah.
Is that healthy? Like,
I don't know. Like it could be, it could
like,
hurt.
It does start to feel like if they're just going to delete all this, that's against the core value proposition of an MMORPG.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know how I ever truly care about Destiny again the same way if they do it again. Like, I was still really hurt about the D1 to D2 change. Because Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2 are fundamentally different games. They're different in so many ways. Guild Wars 1 was not even marketed as an MMORPG.
Yeah.
That's us that put the label on there. And then we put that label on there, and then people talk about like what it did well or didn't do well as an MMO. And they were like, we didn't call it an MMO. That's you. It was a lobby-based game. And so, but Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, for how much we lost, it did not feel different enough to me. And so I was upset for a long time about that change. And so as I look at kind of bringing this in, and I'm playing this, and people start talk about a Destiny 3, I don't understand how that wouldn't hurt them. Like, what do we gain? What do we get if we get a Destiny 3 versus if they just kind of do what World of Warcraft and what Final Fantasy and what Guild Wars are doing, and they say, new story, same game.
The at some point it would have to have that technical leap that cannot just be done in the current engine, and it has to have that value proposition. Destiny 2, I felt like they offered that value proposition, but then when you started playing it, the biggest kickback, why you saw so many people frustrated with it, Forsaken really started to change the narrative. People really liked that campaign. It had an emotional context. It had really big payoffs for like players. A lot of that in my mind. And then ultimately that ended up, being sunset. So it's like, if they're able to sit down and say, like, from a technical perspective, this is something we cannot do within this current engine and design, here we go. But they have cross-play, cross-save. They have drop-in, drop-out multiplayer. They have all these things. So like that value proposition for D3 has to be something that really drives the players to want that, rather than, just keep continuing it on in the current engine and just calling it Destiny, 2 for that sake. But time will tell. I'm not necessarily too worried about that right now, because Destiny for me, like, is my yearly, donation to Bungie.net. Like, they no matter what, like, even if they come out and say, after Final Shape, that's the final thing for Destiny 2, we're gonna do Destiny 3, I'm still buying the Final Shape. I'm still pot committed to that, and so I'm not too personally worried. But it will be something that gets evaluated. Like, was this worth the effort and the pain and the shifting of that? Because I still wish that Destiny 1 was just that. Like, there was no 2. It just continued to evolve from it. But at its core, they when we look back at it now, there was a lot of things they have added that I don't think they could have originally added back in Destiny 1, if they wanted to. But we'll have to, ultimately wait and see.
Without a pretty significant overhaul. I mean, we've watched WoW and 14 change a lot. 14 did go through a pretty big overhaul from one to 2, but
right.
From 2 on, it has still grown to do things that the devs have said were impossible. WoW has grown to do things that the devs said were impossible. There is a region-wide auction house, and you can jump server to server by simply jumping parties. Somebody in stream the other day said, like, well, 14 has a world visit system and WoW doesn't have that. That's because it doesn't need one. You just party and it just jumps you servers seamlessly. No load screen, no nothing. You're just in with somebody else that's in a totally different server instantly, and that's incredible. And that was not possible when the game launched. So I think the other thing is that sometimes we hear devs come out and say, what we want to do is not possible, and then you see somebody else doing it, and without a really good developer evangelist, which is a real job, to kind of communicate on behalf of that dev team, it's really hard to explain to a layman, somebody who's not in the dev space, of why your game is saying something is impossible, but this other game used to say it's impossible,
but it did it,
and then did it. And so it's like, well, if they can make the impossible happen, why can't you?
That's something that's, as a developer, I wish that I could just like take people into the environment in the system and realize that not everything is so, A to B comparison. From the gamer's perspective, from the player's perspective, we're talking apples and apples, right? But then the devs, like, there's so many other like things and challenges and design choices that were maybe made by other people who are no longer in the company that could end up like causing that kind of level of delay or struggle. And so that's just where it's like, oh man, like I know that people like that are comparing apples to apples, but from an like, it really is an apple to pretzel kind of perspective. Like, it's like sometimes that happens, and then if the game's getting the support and the players want it, like the devs, they want to make that. They want to bring that into the game. But that's why the answer is always difficult, because this comes down to things that are said online, taken out of context. You and I have dealt with this in terms of Final Fantasy many times, right? Like Zeppelin was talking about, like Animal Crossing, like it's not Animal Crossing, it's like, oh, and then you see it gets picked up. That becomes the general thought process and people say it. So you also have to be careful about saying whether or not something is or isn't coming, or saying, hey, we'll look into it. And then people saying, oh, they're going to do this, that this is absolutely going to happen. And then it turns out like, oh, it might take us 5 years or 10 years. Just because there's so many things that, when you get into dev, like, oh, we introduced that feature and it broke the game and was unplayable. We have to figure out why and dive into that. And that takes time, money, resources. And sometimes that's something where like, it would be a nice to have, but it's all like, you got to think about it in terms of cost. Now, Paul asked this. He asked this question, and this will be interesting for Chris as well. He says, have they made improvements to the class system so they feel more distinct, or does it still is it still more of a gear focused game? Now, you last played Beyond Light, correct? That was the last. So you got to see Stasis in terms of the first Darkness subclass and how the like aspects and affixes play. Okay, good. They have done that to all the subclasses, all the original Void, Arc, Solar. So you have way more build control, and you've got all the grenades now. One of the things that I always kind of felt frustrated by is like some classes had certain grenades, and like in a way, I actually feel it's way more distinct in terms of your choice as what kind of build that you want to make. And in terms of their abilities, I feel like they do feel way more distinct. And all that work was done over the course of the year of the Witch Queen. So going into Witch Queen, they're introducing Strand, a new darkness subclass. And I think that ultimately is going to pair well to having classes that really do feel more unique. But also, builds and different things are just going to get even more interesting this year forward. And that's my personal take. But if you have any questions, Chris, on that, or if I could help answer that in a different way, Paul, let me know.
So, I mean, I think we're getting build slots now. And so that, like, even if you end up only wanting to play mostly the one way in PvP and mostly the one way in PvE, and so you kind of have these two ways of thinking, it's still nice to have a third build slot because for no other reason, it lets you experiment. It lets you, what doesn't feel good is that I have to unsave my build in a game to progress in a different direction, only to realize I want to go back.
Right.
And so like build slots, if nothing else, give you a place to test. Brian's going to hop on in an hour and we're going to do some content together. And I know I'm going to want to play on the class that I'm really reliable on. But I'd like to mess around with some other stuff. And like build slots right from the get-go already do that.
Yeah.
Within the different kind of gear progressions within the game, it does feel like there's a little bit of a dialogue there where when I last left the game, it still felt like, okay, but the exotics still have a pretty drastic change on your moment-to-moment gameplay. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It just feels like some of your talent trees are chosen in the menu and some of your talent trees are chosen by the gear itself. Where that became frustrating is in PvP because people had just such a huge advantage over you. But where that became really fun was in the PvE side, where it was wildly exploratory, where you could find something and go, oh, what's that? How does that work? And so like that kind of piece of candy moment where things are just dropping off the ground, I found that really rewarding.
Yeah.
So I think that's like having the base builds feel good is really important to me for PvP. For PvE, like I think the gear progression is such a key component. Like that's why we're killing stuff.
Right.
We're killing stuff for loot. And so the loot feeling really powerful feels really good to me. Where I do struggle from there is how do builds carry over from, like, I've been away for a while. So when I come back in, what am I going to need to do to build my character back up to having access to any skills? And what am I going to need to do to all of my gear? Is all of my gear just trash?
So no, your gear is all going to be at the low end cap of the starter. So everybody's going to be at the same power level. Your gear that you have is the gear you have. You will also have access to a couple of slots, but you might not have as many slots as I do. And then overall with your Guardian ranks and playing the game, you can unlock up to 10 different build slots and label them like PvE centric or PvE or like etc. Like you have a lot. And this is going to tie really strongly into raids. This is going to tie strongly into how I play the game. Because just like you, like, yes, the builds all feel way more interesting. I end up just kind of finding a build that I like and that I can do well in PvE and PvP and just kind of sit on it because going through and trying to change the different weapons ends up being a little bit more of a hassle. And especially with some of my weapon-based goals where I've been just working on unlocking catalysts, I'm like, I'm just going to sit on this weapon anyway, even if it's not best or meta. I'm working on this weapon for this reason. But to be able to sit here and say, cool, I'm doing that. Oh, now I'm going to go jump into PvP, or we're going to go do a dungeon, or we're going to do whatever. Let me just load that up so that I can bring the best version of myself to that content. And that's going to give me more ways to experiment with the existing offering of classes where, I don't want to equip this. okay, how do I make my armor really efficient with the guns that are a part that's going to really complement this build? I think that's going to open it up to a lot more variety. And it's going to be, I think, a lot more fun for a lot of players because even if you don't go above and beyond and have all your 10 loadout slots for all the different subclasses, like if you got like 3, you're like, this is something I really enjoy for doing the like Vanguard. This is something I enjoy for PvP. This is something I enjoy for that. Cool, man. And it just makes it easy, snappy to be able to swap between them. And that's exactly what I think is going to be a huge booster for a lot of players. I honestly think that's going to be something where, because people would say, hey, they have the API, you can go do that via an app. I'm like, that's a whole other extra step, man. Like, it's like, I'm not that upset that I'm just playing the game in a way that I find fun. I'm not going to go download an app and make this extra effort, and that's just me.
So how does it work if you want to play more than one of the classes? I've spent like in my time away, I've spent a lot more time in other MMOs.
Yeah.
And what I've been moving towards is I've typically been a one character player, but now I have every classic cap in Final Fantasy, and I'm starting to approach that in World of Warcraft, and I'm preparing to work towards that in Guild Wars. New World encourages the crap out of me using their different system, but it's all on one character. How do I? It feels like I'm coming back on my Hunter. What happens to my Warlock and Titan when I'm caught up?
I'd also defer like to anybody in chat if they know, because my head knowledge says that you still have to go and progress the story on the different characters. It's not like there's now like your gear you can transfer between. You have your vault. Like there's a lot of that happens, but for me, I always kind of also found that to be a little bit extra, and only kind of did that for a handful of weapons that I really, really cared about. But at its core, I ended up just kind of sticking with Warlock. That's what I've done. In the past, I've done Warlock and Titan, and I never got around to really kind of playing as a Hunter. And so I'm very curious to see that. So I know that's been a part of the conversation. I know people within the community have asked that there be some level of like crossover, like especially you do these bigger quests, a lot of work has to go into that. Could you just have that same level? And so if anybody in chat knows if they've made that change, I have not seen that written. So it ends up probably being that if you really want to get sweaty, you still got to go grind it out.
Okay.
Yeah, and chat's confirmed them.
Within the vaulting was a really controversial thing that's happened over the course. What is the state of? Okay, so you come back.
Mm-hmm.
Let's assume the expansion tomorrow is nothing but incredible.
Right.
I'm excited for it. I think a lot of people are excited for it. It's nothing but incredible, but it is finite. And so you get to the point where you're like, all right, I've kind of done everything I want to do this week. I'm waiting for next week. You've missed some expansions. Maybe not everybody's around every single year.
Right.
What's the process to go back and either pick those up? What's the process of getting into anything that you maybe bought the expansion, but you didn't end up kind of playing it as much as you thought you would?
The good news is they've stopped the storied and the expansion vaulting. So where in the past Shadowkeep would have been moved out with Lightfall, that's sticking around. So if you own that, you still have that. They haven't gotten rid of it. And everything they say going forward is also going to stick into the core package of what we're playing. If it was anything from the Red War, Destiny 2, like year 1 and 2 and 3, I think year 1 and 2, something like that around that, you can't have real access to that. But they are bringing more of the things like the legendary quests and vaulting as part of like a exotic quest rotator, and they're starting to kind of like trying to bring some of that in as a part of like various different weekly rotators and more over the course of this year. So for me, I would say like you coming back, like you still probably have things within Beyond Light to do. You definitely have Witch Queen stuff to do. Some of the stuff that they've added in is getting like vaulted. I think some of the seasonal activities that were in the previous thing, those are getting kind of vaulted, but that was more
they
just
come back. Like when they say the word vaulted, I think of Disney Vault, where it comes back. Like just as like a question of the word vaulting, what does that mean?
So what it means right now is deleted.
Okay.
Like vaulting, like the term means that it has the intention of coming back and does.
It goes into Fallout and it never comes back.
But they have brought back like the Leviathan in a unique and different way. That was a part of that happened this last year, which was really interesting. So they're finding ways to bring things back, but not essentially how they like were. There's a change. There's a time element that is applied, and things have happened to that. But At its core, like, I really hope that we get to see them bring back for, Forsaken. I really would love to see people be able to go and experience the Red War. And if it ultimately ends up being as a part of a weekly quest rotator that's like, hey, this week go experience the Red War, and then next week we're gonna do this, and then next week we're that, and that just rotates in.
That's what WoW does.
I think that it would end up ultimately being probably the best trade-off that we have available.
I was in a sequential rotator on time walking. Time walking is not always available, so time walking is already come and go. And when it's available, time walking is in order. And so you would have expansion 1, and the next time time walking is available, it'll be expansion 2. And it's every X number of weeks, and it's just on rotate. And so if Destiny said, hey, every first weekend of the month, we're going to bring back something old, and we're going to bring them back in order. And so it becomes this very, like, if you want to play through them, set aside the next 6 weekends and you can experience this content. Or if you just missed one thing, you're like, okay, let me mark that down on my calendar. I'm definitely going to game 3 weekends from now because that's content that I really missed or I'd really love to experience again. So like, that's what I picture the word vaulting mean. But what I found is vaulting means something drastically different from game to game. And a lot of games, vaulting means they're putting it in the safe, never to be accessed again. And so it's the exact same as deleting it as far as the everyday player.
The question will be is like, what's that time frame, work out to? And that's something where, like, as a player, like, there's things that Bungie does that, like, I do get frustrated at. But as also a player, like, the gunplay and the gameplay is just so good. Like, it's like, honestly, it really is like, I wish that if the game wasn't as good as the game is, there would be no way in hell that they would be able to pull off the things that they've done and still be a game that every year people are excited about playing. And every year there'll be people going and making comments like, this game is the worst. I hate it. I got over 20,000 hours in this game and I hope it dies. And it's like, and then you'll see that person in, 6 months going, hey, what's all changed? I'm thinking about coming back. It's like,
it's got the core moment to moment gameplay is best in class. Like, the best you can hope for is to have a game that is half as good at the combat system as Destiny. Like, that would be, if every game that released for the rest of time was half as good in the moment-to-moment gameplay as how Destiny feels, we would be in a golden era of games. It's all the other stuff that can frustrate people a little bit. I get that. I do. So I think that's everything that I want to know. I'm excited. The servers are already offline.
Fun, dude. Tomorrow is going to be fun.
I love Expansion Day.
Okay.
Expansion Day is wildly fun in any game. I assume step 1 is to do the story. And
Here's my hope. If you can do this, like if you're going to stream it tomorrow on stream, obviously when it goes live, there might be a bit of a queue, but team up with this community, play it on Legendary. Because I think even still, like, you'll be boosted, but the nice thing is Legendary will actually feed you a lot of power. It's going to give you like a good challenge. Like, it's going to feel like I did that last time. A lot of fun. It's also fun playing with people. If you get frustrated or if you just hit a wall and it's just not working, you can always step it down. Like, it's not going to have you start all over at normal. So it's like you can even then tune it back up. So it does give you that. I would highly, highly, highly encourage you, play on Legendary. Like, let people, whoever likes hanging out with you tomorrow, jump in and join you. And I think you guys are going to have like an absolute blast. I cannot wait to watch that. And yet at the same time, experience it for myself. It should be fun. It should be a lot of fun. And yeah. So, that's what I think when I did the Witch Queen, that's what I did. And that's what I'm doing again. Even if I'm doing it solo, I think the Legendary campaign is absolutely the thing you want to touch.